Welcome to On My Way to Wealth, the podcast where busy Gen Xers can learn financial tips as they navigate life on their way to wealth. And now, please join your host, Luis Rosa.
This episode is brought to you by Latin Excellence. Visit latinexcellence.com. That's Latinx, CELLENCE.com or latinxmovement.com to learn more and shop our merchandise. You are excellence. Hello and welcome to another episode of On My Way to Wealth. My name is Louis and I'm your host. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you're happy, healthy, and safe. Today, I want to talk to you about renter's insurance. This came about because where I currently live, I'm renting, and I just had an incident over the weekend that involved some pipes leaking and damage to a closet, living room. I mean, water damage can do a lot in a short period of time. Luckily, I was home. I was able to catch it on time and shut off the main water supply to the apartment, so everything's fine. But it dawned on me that I have a renter's insurance policy, and luckily I did not have to use it this time. But I wanted to talk to you about that because if you are renting an apartment or a house from somebody else and you do not have renter's insurance, you are leaving yourself exposed. More and more landlords nowadays started asking for homeowners renter's insurance as a requirement. A lot of landlords don't, especially if they're just like a private landlord. Maybe they don't even think of it and ask for it. But just because your landlord may not require it, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have it. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what renter's insurance is and some of the things that it covers so that you can make a decision whether or not you need it. And if you do, you probably should get it because otherwise you might be leaving yourself very exposed. So let's get into some of the basics. What is renter's insurance? So as you know, if you own a home, usually you have homeowner's insurance. And there's different aspects to that homeowner's insurance that covers property damage, it covers liability, medical payments to others, and so on and so forth. Now, as a renter, you can get a policy that is similar to that to cover your own. Because what happens is a lot of people are under the misconception that the landlord's insurance might be covering them. And that's not the case. If you're renting from somebody that have a rental property, they have an insurance policy that very likely is just covering the building itself. That's what they care about, the building, not your belongings. So don't be under the misconception that your landlord's policy has you covered. If you are renting from somebody and you have a fire, and that fire destroys your laptop and your TV and all that, your landlord's policy ain't covering none of that. So I wanted to make you aware of that if you are not aware of it. And if you are aware of it, I wanted to just give you that push to highly consider buying yourself renter's insurance. So let's talk about it. Your landlord's policy very likely will not cover you because their policy is designed to cover the building itself. Now, there are some exceptions like flood or earthquake that are usually not included in a renter's policy, but you can buy separate coverages for that. If you are in a zone that is prone to those, definitely want to consider that. Number two, protecting your personal belongings. So let's talk about specifically, a lot of people don't realize how much they actually own if they were to combine it all together. You may not realize the value of your belongings, but if you think about it, you have a smartphone, maybe you have a laptop, maybe you have a tablet, you probably have a flat screen TV, you have some electronics in the house, game consoles. When you add up all that stuff together, your couch, your mattress, everything, that can add to thousands and thousands of dollars. So think about it. What if all of that stuff was damaged in one shot? Do you have enough money to replace those out of pocket? If the answer is no, then you really want to consider buying a renter's insurance because the value of all your stuff may be more than what you actually think. Now, there are two things I want you to consider when you're buying a renter's policy. There are two things that you might see as a common just wording. One of them is called actual cash value. The other one is called replacement cost. Actual cash value means that if you have a 5-year-old TV, the insurance company will pay you for what a 5-year-old TV is worth today, which may not be enough, very likely will not be enough for you to actually go buy a new TV today to replace that, right? So I highly recommend that you get replacement cost instead. It might be just slightly more expensive, but replacement cost means that the insurance company would give you enough money to actually pay for what that item costs today, not the value of the actual thing you lost. That's a key differentiator right there, because replacement cost will give you enough money for you to actually go out there and replace that item at today's prices, right? So there are some limits for certain big ticket items. So you got to look at your policy, so things like jewelry, firearms, things like that might be limited to a certain dollar amount. So if you have something like in my case, an engagement ring, I actually added an additional scheduled personal property endorsement to my renter's insurance so that I can insure the engagement ring because the value was above and beyond the limits of the policy. So you can do that. If you have large ticket items, have some jewelry, maybe firearms, things like that, you can speak to your insurance agent and say, hey, what if I do a scheduled personal property endorsement and I add these things to it? So bring those up. Things that the insurance can also cover, things like water backup. Imagine like a toilet or a drain, some water backup happens in your house. Water can do a lot of damage. As I was telling you at the beginning, that was the case in my case. I had a leak this weekend and I was able to get it under control, but water can do a lot of damage. Now, if your property is damaged because of water, your landlord's policy may not cover that. So you may want to have your own insurance policy. Number 3, liability coverage. This is huge because this is another misconception that people don't really think about is the insurance policy that you buy as a renter. One aspect that it covers, like we talked about, is your belongings, but you can also get liability coverage. And what does that mean? When you buy liability coverage, you're protecting your assets. So something as simple as your dog biting somebody, you can get sued. And if you have renter's insurance, there's a liability protection under that renter's policy that can basically cover you for somebody suing you for your dog biting, right? Medical payments to others, somebody tripped and fell inside your apartment, you can be covered under renter's insurance for that. Legal fees, court judgments. If you don't have renter's insurance, you're leaving yourself open because then they can come after you personally, right? So money you have saved, things like that, could become accessible to somebody in a lawsuit, right? So you want to protect yourself. Number 4, it may not really be as expensive as you might think. Just to give you an example, I was just looking at my policy today. My policy is $149 a year. I mean, that is nothing. That is less than $13 a month. I know we all have subscriptions for other things that probably cost more than that. So in my case, I'm like, for $149 a year, I'm not going to leave myself open to having to come out of pocket for a lawsuit or my belongings being all damaged at the same time. So it's really not as expensive as some people might think, especially if you bundle it. Because let's say you drive and you already have an auto policy, well, speak to your carrier because they might also offer renter's insurance. And if they do, they can bundle both your auto and your renters and give you a package deal, give you a discount for it. So it's not really as expensive as you think. Think about how expensive it would be to replace all your belongings or to be part of a lawsuit and have to pay out, right? So if you have to pay $12, $13, $15 a month, it's really not a lot of money compared to what you're protecting. And number 5 is also having coverage while you're traveling, having protection away from home. It's not just about protecting your belongings in your house, because part of the policy is not really just ensuring the location. It also protects you. So while you're traveling away from home, say you have a laptop and you bring it with you on vacation, it gets stolen, your renter's insurance policy can cover that as well. Obviously every policy is different, but these are the types of things that are covered. So you want to make sure that you're covered for a wide range of things. Your apartment is, let's say there's a fire and you have to leave your premises because it's going to take 3 months to fix, where your renter's insurance policy can cover for your, what they call loss of use, so that you can then go out and stay at a hotel and things like that, food, certain meals, things like that. So this is a whole different level of coverages that you may not be aware of. So if you are shopping for a renter's policy, let's talk about just some common terminology that you might see. One of the major ones you're going to see is personal property. So this basically is just coverage for your clothing, your furniture, electronics, all their belongings. If you see the word loss of use, this pays for hotel stays, restaurant meals, other expenses. If you have to live elsewhere while your home undergoes some covered repairs, That's what loss of use is. You lose the use of your property. Liability, like we talked about, it pays out if you are responsible for injuries to other people or damage to their property. So one example would be, let's say you accidentally left your bathtub running and the water leaks to the apartment downstairs and it damages their apartment. Your landlord's policy probably not going to cover that. So your renter's policy will, right? So these are the kind of things you got to think about. Medical payments to others. This is also important. It covers injuries to other people in your home. And what's cool about medical payments to others is regardless of who's at fault. So even if you were at fault, if you see that as part of your policy, medical payments to others, up to that limit, your policy will cover regardless of whether or not you were at fault. So to give you an idea of some of the major things that are covered, we're talking fire, lightning, we're talking riot, what they call civil commotion, damage by aircraft, damage caused by another vehicle. You see that sometimes in the news where a car just goes into somebody's living room. That could be covered. Smoke, vandalism, theft. Somebody breaks into your apartment, steals your computer, steals, your TV, things like that. There's so many things that are covered under this thing that is really beneficial for the small amount of money that you'll be paying. The loss of use that we're talking about is or additional living expenses. So let's say you can't live in your home after a disaster that's covered by your policy. The insurance will kick in until you have all those repairs done. Major. Imagine you had to move out of your apartment for 3 months. Where would you live and how would you pay for it? All right. Liability coverage. So if someone is injured, so I'm just giving you a recap. Somebody's injured and they sue you, a lawsuit. Imagine the wreck that could do to your life. You can cover yourself for that, right? And then again, think about the optional coverages that you can buy. That's flood and earthquake. If you live in a place that is likely to flood or have an earthquake, you want to consider those extra coverages. And you also want to consider the scheduled personal properties for things that are high ticket items that you may own. Like if you own furs, you own jewelry, watches, silverware, goldware. I know people have actual gold coins in their house. You can cover those. If you have watercraft or trailers, right? So you have a jet ski, things like that. You can cover those things or any items used for business purposes. So think about all those things, for the amount of money that you're paying is probably not a lot of money. So I just wanted to share that with you because I had that incident this weekend. I was like, wow, I don't think I've ever spoken about renter's insurance. So let me share that with my audience. So as always, thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, send me an email, luis@onmywaytowealth.com. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to On My Way to Wealth. If you have any questions, please send me an email at luis@onmywaytowealth.com. The information provided here is for information and education purposes only. The opinions expressed herein are solely those of myself, unless otherwise specifically cited. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by my firm or myself about other parties' information or accuracy or completeness. All information or ideas provided should be discussed in detail with a financial advisor, accountant, or legal counsel prior to implementation. Thank you.